Welcome back to the Fighting Saints Report. Jack Milewski, Jim Leitner, getting you set for the final weekend of games here in November, and the final week of games, really, because it starts on Wednesday for the Fighting Saints. They'll be in a very familiar place, Buccaneer Arena, for the third time this season. Des Moines and Dubuque play 8 times in total, and they've started off with 3 straight, as Des Moines being the home team. Then a travel day on Wednesday night into Thursday morning. Thursday is off for Thanksgiving, Friday in Fargo, Saturday in Sioux Falls. A busy weekend for the Fighting Saints, a lot of travel in that weekend, and this is going to be a big test for the Fighting Saints, not necessarily because they're playing the top teams in the league, but because of how much they're going to be on a bus this weekend. From Des Moines to Fargo, it's 7 hours. From Fargo to Sioux Falls, it's 4. From Sioux Falls back, obviously you don't worry about playing another game after that, but it's still another 5 hours. And to Des Moines, it's 3 hours. So all told, the Fighting Saints are going to be spending close to 20 hours on a bus this weekend. It starts off with probably the toughest team of the 3 in terms of the record in Des Moines, and just because also they played them so recently, there's that familiarity. It always gets tougher when you play a team more and more. But then Fargo's beaten Dubuque, and they are never a slouch. They play physical, they play low scoring. Sioux Falls, the record says it's an easy game, but when it's the third game in 4 days after a lot of travel, it's not going to be easy to play for the Fighting Saints. So this will be a really good test because of the amount of time they're going to have to spend on a bus and the amount of time they're going to have to focus on rest and recovery.
Yeah, and I think when I asked Luke Robinson about the challenge of this last weekend, playing in Waterloo and then playing in Des Moines, and to me that sounded like a real tough challenge. And he said, we don't think of them that way. We don't think of things as real tough challenges because we know we have the guys in the locker room who can handle it. We have all the pieces in place to survive those kind of challenges, and we don't think of them as big challenges. So I think first and foremost, that's the best mindset to have. Me and you, we look at it from the outside and we say, man, our old bodies, how are we going to recover from all that travel and playing 3 games in 4 days? But these guys don't really seem to matter. It doesn't seem to matter to them, and they embrace the challenge, and that's first and foremost, that's the best mindset to have. But take a step back and look at it from our perspective. Yeah, I think it's a real tough challenge. Playing, I think, Des Moines is the number 2 team in the Western Conference. I think Fargo is a better team than Des Moines. So I think you're playing 2 of the top 3 teams in the West, obviously, and Sioux Falls is the defending Clark Cup champion. And even though the record isn't as good as it probably could be, they're going to be tough at home, playing in front of that big crowd and playing with some pride. And they picked up a win this weekend in Youngstown, so I think they're going to be tougher than that record indicates.
Yeah, and you and I know, and the coaching staff, the team knows as well, there's not an easy win in this league, no matter what. When you look at the games against Des Moines and Fargo, 2 teams that Dubuque have played already, right now the expectation seems to be a 1-goal game with Des Moines because both have been 1-goal games. Both have gone past 60 minutes. And Fargo was a 1-goal game as well, where the Fighting Saints outplayed the Force, but not by a ton. Even though the shots were 30-17, it felt like Fargo was able to keep them to the perimeter, and that's kind of their game plan. Is they don't have a ton of scoring, but they can play physical and they can keep you to the outside. So at the first 2 games of that series, I don't really know what to expect with Sioux Falls because of how different a team they are from last year. But the first 2 games really seem like they're going to lend themselves to a tight game. Maybe Fargo low scoring, Des Moines with their offense could be a little higher scoring, but I don't expect it to be more than 1 or 2 goal differential at the end of either game.
No, and I think the one thing that I kind of look at is, Dubuque got beat by Waterloo a few weekends ago, and they came back and they thrashed them 7-1. Hopefully this is kind of a similar situation, that the Saints, they played Fargo. It was there was a game after they lost their first regulation loss of the season. So I think they were a little bit, I don't know if they were doubting themselves a little bit that night. But I think the familiarity of playing Fargo is going to help the Fighting Saints a lot in this second game this weekend. It made a big difference in Waterloo. They knew exactly what to expect from their personnel, and they went out and they played really good hockey and put up 7 goals. I don't expect them to score 7 goals in Fargo, as Fargo's a very tight defensive team, but I do think this is going to be a good opportunity for the Fighting Saints to show how much they've improved and how much they can adapt to an opponent that they already know. So I think that's going to be a good game.
Yeah, it's a weekend that, realistically, Dubuque's been sweeping almost every single weekend this year. Realistically, this is a tough one to say that they will sweep again just because of the travel and playing 3 teams. This team has proven that they can probably win these 3 games, but I would say 2-1's a great record if you go on the road with all this travel against the teams you're playing. Then when you move forward to December, 2 against Muskegon, 2 against Green Bay. The Muskegon is both here at Mystique Community Ice Center. Green Bay is a home and home. But it'll be nice for the Fighting Saints after all that travel here to end the month that they're back for 3 out of 4 at home before they leave for the holiday break. And Muskegon they saw once, but it's not the same. It's almost like a new Muskegon team since they played in the very first game of the season. And then they haven't seen Green Bay yet, so it'll be nice to essentially see 2 new opponents to end this season, and really nice to see some Eastern Conference opponents because it's felt like Dubuque has been back in the Western Conference the first 2 months of the season.
Yeah, and to that point, Dubuque has kind of struggled with the Western Conference in recent seasons. So to have this kind of record with a really top-heavy schedule or a loaded schedule in terms of Western Conference teams, that's a good sign. Mm-hmm. And my opinion, just looking so far, I do think the Western Conference is a better conference again this year, as they have been. I think some of the more elite teams are out there, with the exception of Dubuque, Chicago. But I think from top to bottom, I think the West is tougher. So to have that kind of record is really important. But it is going to be nice to see some teams from the East for a change. And that Muskegon series is going to be interesting. They've kind of hit a little bit of a snag this weekend in Omaha. So it's going to be interesting to see them. And in Green Bay, haven't seen them since the preseason. And, you really can't gain a whole lot from seeing a team in the preseason because they change so much. So it's going to be exciting. And then we get Christmas.
Yeah. Long break for Christmas. The Fighting Saints will be off for basically 2 weeks, about a week and a half before they have to be back in Dubuque, and then they'll play 3 games in a row right on the other side of the Christmas break. There's 7 games between now and that Christmas break. Again, 3 this weekend, 2 against Muskegon the 6th and 7th, 2 against Green Bay the 13th and 14th. Realistically, after that 7-game stretch, what do you see in the Fighting Saints record as with those games?
Oh, boy. In those 7 games, this is always, every coach will tell you, this is always the toughest stretch of the season because you're at that point where it's been a long year already. For guys who have played midgets, a lot of times they only play 30, 40 games a season, and, you're already almost halfway there. But this is always the toughest stretch because it's between Thanksgiving and Christmas, and guys are starting to think about what they're going to do. They're going to what buddies they're going to see when they get back home for Christmas and all that. So it's always tough. But I think, realistically, I think they can win 5 out of the 7. Mm-hmm. And I think if you win 5 out of the 7, that puts you in a real nice spot going into the Christmas break. You're right there at the top of the standings in the Eastern Conference, and it sets you up really well for the second half. Now, the key is when you go home for Christmas, make sure you skate and stay in condition so you don't come back with too much excess Christmas goodies in your system. But I think if they can win 5 out of the 7, I think they'll position themselves really well and build up some a margin for error in the second half.
Yeah, I like that mark too. It's kind of just based on where they've been playing so far this season. 5 wins seems very doable in this 7-game stretch, not discounting that there are going to be tough games, but more so the Fighting Saints have proven that they can play a good style of hockey against anyone. But 2 losses, it's more just a byproduct of eventually teams are going to be able to game plan and figure you out in this league, and it's not like the talent level takes a huge drop off from the number 1 teams to even the bottom of the standings. So I expect it to be very tough. I think 2-1 this weekend, and I haven't decided if they're going to split with Green Bay or Muskegon yet, but one of those weekends going to be a sweep to end December on a good note. And look, if what we're predicting comes true and they're 17-4-1 going into the break, I don't think anyone's going to be disappointed with that.
No, not at all. And I think the tough series, the tougher weekends, I think, are when you have those back-to-backs against the same team, because the coaching is so good in this league that coaches make good adjustments overnight. And, they can throw an entirely different game plan at you, and it's tough to adjust to that. So those, I think, are going to be tough. Muskegon, that's going to be a tough series. Green Bay is going to be a tough series just because you're playing back-to-back. And like I said, teams are really good at game planning, and players are good at figuring out what the opponent does and understanding how to counter that. So, I think five wins. I'm not saying 2 regulation losses either,
right.
Jack. So I'm, it might be 5-1-1 maybe. So
well, we're almost guaranteed to go to overtime on Wednesday. The way they played Des Moines this season.
The way it's gone with Des Moines, for sure, you're almost guaranteed that's going to happen. But it's going to be exciting.
Yeah, Des Moines on Wednesday, 6:35 puck drop. Fargo on Friday, 7 o'clock puck drop. And Sioux Falls on Saturday, 7 o'clock puck drop as well. A very busy week and weekend to end the November slate here in 2019-2020. Fighting Saints again 12-2-1 right now, looking to continue to roll on this Midwest road trip as they head even further west into the Western Conference. We'll take another break. When we come back, we'll look at the Western Conference as well as the rest of the USHL in what was once again a busy weekend here for USHL hockey. Back in a moment.